So welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. Karen Long, President and Founder of Streamline Government Contracts. Streamline helps government contractors who seek experienced, effective support with contract management that will reduce your risks, increase your profits, and enhance your reputation with the government and with your partners. We do this by negotiating teaming agreements of contracts, preparing estimates of completion when necessary, and speaking to contracting officers in their own language. We invited Diane Mentzer here today to join us on Government Contractor Chat because the way she helps GovCons clarify and align their operations goes hand in hand with our contract management services to form an unshakable foundation that facilitates growth. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Lindsay.
Thank you, Karen. I am Lindsay Riegelsberger, Director of Operations and Business Development for Streamline Government Contracts. I'm going to introduce our guest speaker now. Let's welcome Diane Mentzer, Business Operations and COO Advisor at Diane Integrates, who specializes in aligning teams and creating focus so companies can stop spinning their wheels and accelerate. Diane, take it away.
Thanks, Lindsay and Karen. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me back. And this is just, I love talking about this topic. For years, I was like the go-to person for past performance, and it's fun to be able to help others benefit from what I learned the hard way. So one of the biggest things is don't wait until it's too late with your past performance evaluations, whether it's a CPARS evaluation from the government or from your prime contractor or client in general. It's great to have an evaluation that you ask them to complete so you have that data from as many sources as possible. And if you're a GovCon, mirror the CPARS when you create a form that you ask your prime contractors to complete so that it aligns. But we'll get into that a little bit later. But once, especially in government contracting, once your evaluation has been submitted, once your CPARS has been submitted, it's very difficult to get an evaluation score changed if you think that it should have been higher. And really the most you can do is do the comments, which not everybody's going to look at. Think about these overwhelmed reviewers. They're going to go into CPARS. They're going to look at your scores. Maybe they'll read a few comments. They may not even look at what you're, when you counter the rating or read it in detail or get what you're trying to say. And that federal rating, those scores are official. That's what they look at. That's what they see. And so it's not just about the work that you do. It's really about positioning yourself to get those scores and to make your company and the work that you've done stand out as much as possible. So Karen, Lindsay, and I've hinted at this a little bit, but I spent the majority of my career, over 30 years, in GovCon. That's a scary number to say. I started on the project side, the project coordinator, did events, moved into project management, earned all exceptional past performance, perfect past performance evaluations, 5 out of 5 for the majority of the government contracts that I managed and all of the subcontracts that I managed over the years, and helped write the past performance volume for hundreds of proposals. And we were able to get the maximum past performance scores on a lot of those. And that is like some additional benefit that I bring when I'm helping government contractors with their operations and with really creating that foundation for growth, is that I get the GovCon piece of it. And I have a lot of strategies around proposal writing. I've, brought in at least over 50 million, probably more than that over the years in new work to government contractors. Helped, run these we won the Outstanding Contractor Award from ACF, Administration for Children and Families, for one of the projects I ran. So a lot of experience in really delivering those services that go above and beyond. And a lot of that has to do with really being in sync with your customer. So I have strategies for that as well. And so that's added benefit that I bring when I help GovCons really up their operations and stop spinning their wheels and move forward. So there are 6 steps to getting the top past performance scores in my view. And it starts with setting the stage. So you really start thinking about your annual evaluations from day one. As soon as it's awarded, if it's already awarded, then now. You really want to start thinking about it and setting that stage with your client, whether it's your federal client, prime contractor, or the clients that you're hiring if you're a private B2B company or even B2C. Start talking to your clients right away about wanting to exceed their expectations and what you're looking for in an evaluation so you can stay in sync. Training your team to help you get the data and the details and the examples you need, capturing your accomplishments in real time. Even when you're the one doing it 6 months later, trying to remember all those details, so much is coming at you so fast in government contracting, especially. It's just tough. So get it down in real time. Use interviews, have your BD staff, your proposal writers doing some interviews because they know what they need. And if you ask your project staff just to write it, it's a lot of back and forth. There's questions that need to be answered. And again, you're going back to them later. So interviews is a really great way to keep that flowing and build those connections between your BD team and your project staff. Formatting and connecting the dots, we'll get into that. I've got some examples. And saving each version that you use for a proposal, pulling it out and saving it as a standalone document so it's ready as a starting point for similar ops, and just so you have that history too. Really, so we'll dig into each one of these. Getting in sync with your federal lead or client or prime contractor, but letting them know from day one that you're going for exceptional evaluations. You want 5 out of 5. That's a core value for you. That's what you're going for. And find out what that means to them. And, what would you need to do for them to be able to give you those evaluations? And if you have the CPARs, if you're in a GovCon, that definition is, and I've included it a little later, but that definition is in the CPARs. So yes, you have to stay within scope, but you have to add value and exceed requirements in a way that benefits the government. So change government to client. You're exceeding requirements in a way that benefits your client while staying within scope. But that can mean different things to different people. So getting on the same page with that right away, then you're in sync. And if they say, well, we never give exceptional evaluations, dig into that and be genuinely curious. Not, well, why, it's not a combative thing. You're in this together as a team. You're working together. And so find out why. Maybe they've never received the kind of service that you can deliver. And it's like, okay, well, what would it take to change your mind? How are we going to get there? And you can also say, okay, we get that. Let's work together for a little while and check in. You don't need, but they understand that that's what you're going for from the beginning. Then you need to check in, I'd say quarterly at least, how are we doing? Figuring that out. The other neat strategy you can do is in your monthly reports, because you're going to be capturing this data in real time. In your monthly reports, start highlighting. This is how we benefited this is how we exceeded requirements in a way that benefited the government. Start putting it in your monthly reports. Get that in there. Call it out. Make it fact, So then it's not, they're writing something that they're going to have to defend, because if they give you those ratings, they may, they have to put some kind of comment in to defend them. So make it fact from the beginning. And you provide those examples and you write them in a way that they can be copy pasted if the client wants to use them. You're always putting that information out there as here's some examples of how we did this. It's just to help them not start with a blank page and give them content they can use if they want. But that's always optional for them. And we'll get into that a little bit later too. Training your team. And this is where everybody plays a role in this, right? Because your people that are on the ground delivering the service are going to have experiences and see things that you as a project manager, especially if you're running multiple projects, may not see. If you're in the BD world portion of a company and not working on projects, you're not going to have that information. So you know what the scope is, you maybe know what the big deliverables are, but there's day-to-day activities that are taking place that you want to capture. And when people get complimented, train your team. Like when you're in a staff meeting, you're in a meeting with the client and they compliment you on something, write it down. Start keeping a log. Ask them, thank you so much for calling this out. Is it okay if we quote you on this in some of our materials? Figure out what's you want to be okay before you use somebody's words and say so-and-so said this, but usually they won't mind. Or you can send it to them an email follow-up later. Thank you so much for saying this at our meeting the other day. Is it okay with you if we use this as a quote in our proposals? If they love your work, they're going to be happy to sing your praises, but always get on the same page there as well. And helping your team understand what the guidelines are for exceeding requirements in a way that benefits the government, and ask so that they're in on it with you, right? You want them to also be looking for ways that they can do that. And then so that they're watching for those opportunities, they can bring it up, and then having them just be part of that, because you'll want to interview key people as well. And so it's just creating that mindset of we are an exceptional company, we're going for exceptional results, and helping them understand how that benefits them as well. It's not just, hey, we're going for exceptional results just because, that's what helps you get additional work, especially in GovCon, because other customers are looking at those scores, which then creates opportunities for people to advance within the company because you have more work, you have more opportunities. And perhaps you have a bonus structure where when your team gets all exceptional CPARS scores, there's some kind of bonus or something that you have for your team. So it's an incentivizer as well. So those are all ways to really get your team involved and thinking about it, so it becomes habit to them, which is going to improve your scores and strengthen your proposals. And improve the results you're getting for your clients. So many wins. So capturing the data in real time. This is super important because you forget, your staff forgets, there's so much going on. It's always, just what happened lately. Like, think about it. Every time you look at a list of the 100 top songs of all times, 100 movies of all times, 80% were within the last 3 years. Right? Maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but way too many on that list were within the last 3 to 5 years, because that's what people remember. So logging them right away is what makes a big difference. And set up your log, include them in your monthly reports, anything that you can do to help highlight these. But think about it by the rate for GovCons, and use the rate. And really, these are great rating areas for anyone. You've got quality, management, schedule, cost control. Now, these two are more GovCon related. Small business subcontractor plan. If you're a small business, that's just an NA and you don't have to worry about that. And regulatory compliance. Lots of people think that you can only get satisfactories for regulatory compliance because you either comply or you don't, but that's not true. I've gotten very goods and exceptionals for regulatory compliance. Keep track of how you help the government with their compliance, right? It's not just about you as a contractor complying, but if you can help the government, or if you can help other contractors be more compliant. So these are ways, think about that. What are you doing to help them be compliant, and call those out? You probably won't get exceptional, but you should be able to at least get very good. And here, as I said before, are the definitions about the language from CPARS about how to get those ratings. So exceptional, they have to perform contractual requirements I've got to move the chat so I can read this exactly. So, sorry. Performance meets contractual requirements and exceeds many to the government's benefit. So to get exceptional, you need to have more than just one instance of exceeding requirements in a way that benefits the government. For very good, it's some. So either way, you should have more than one. But if you can, the more you have, the better, the stronger your case for exceptional. But either way, it should be able to get much better than satisfactory, which the ratings are. Exceptional, that's 5 out of 5. Very good, 4 out of 5. Satisfactory is 3 out of 5. You don't want to even think about anything below that. So, but you're not a C company, right? You didn't get into this to provide satisfactory or average services. So documenting how you're doing it and keeping track of it. But those two definitions are really important for you to know. Share them with your team, and always think about staying within scope as well, because when you go out of scope to provide services that exceed requirements, you're putting yourself at risk, and you're putting your government client at risk, because they're not supposed to be asking you to do things that are out of scope. So, you can get creative as long as you have a definition and justification and can tie it to scope, you're good. So sorry, let's go back. So capturing data in real time. So do it in real time. Do it with your monthly reports. Just make sure you're always looking for this. As things come up, have your staff report it. If you have a shared document, you'd have them log it. You could do it in a database or spreadsheet where you're tagging things, but you can also just do it in a simple Word document. Have a section for each item and log things there. Include date, when things happen. So if you're going back to it later, it's like, oh yeah, this was something we did in March of 2025. Now, this gets to developing your past performance overview for proposals, but don't wait until your solicitation comes out. So this is also along the same lines of keeping it in real time. Every 6 months is probably good for updating these. Otherwise, it gets a little overwhelming. And everybody's busy, we know that. So, and doing it through interviews. So you want to have your proposal staff or BD staff, whatever you've got on staff leading these things, doing those interviews, because as a proposal expert or business development expert, you have a feel for what the government's going to ask for in proposals. You have that insight as to what your pipeline looks like for the year. You know what you're going after. You've been studying these opportunities. So what you want to look for when you are building your past performance overviews, which is like a master document that can get super long. You want as much information in this document as possible in the overview. You want to think about, we're looking at this opportunity and I think there are some connections here. So maybe it's, I'm going to use meetings because that's kind of simple, but like, this opportunity that we're going after includes conference coordination and meeting planning. And we do some meetings here. I need to make sure and draw out as much as possible about that. And sometimes the connections are a little bit, aren't quite as straightforward. You might not have tasks that are in direct alignment, but the project that you're doing now, one of the tasks includes analysis and a data analysis, and you're going after something that has a data analysis component. You want to make sure that you draw those things out, because if you looked at the tasks just one by one, they may not line up exactly, but there may be elements or subtasks that you're doing that are directly related to this other work. So you want to dig deep and really get as much out of it about what, the type of work they're doing, the success they're having, accomplishments, data points, capturing all that information. And as an interviewer, you can draw that out so that your questions are being answered. And if something's not clear, ask questions. This is your chance to get as much information as possible. The first time that we did this like this, when I was working for Performance Excellence Partners, the first time we did this, oh my gosh, this project that we thought we knew what they were doing, from the BD side of it, we weren't really involved hands-on. It's like, oh yeah, I read the scope. Okay, I get it. When we talked to them, what they were doing was so much deeper. They actually transitioned from fully in-person meetings to fully virtual meetings over COVID, had to do it quickly. And we're doing so many interesting and creative things with Zoom and pairing it with Microsoft tools that Zoom was making updates to their tool based on things that our team was asking for. That's huge, right? Imagine being able to call that out in a proposal. Like, our tech team is so on it that Zoom is making updates to their platform based on what we're asking for. Now, granted, we probably weren't the only ones asking for that kind of stuff, but we could say that because it was fact. So that, those are cool things that you can dig out and highlight. And when you're doing this, getting that information from the key staff, the project staff, you also want to talk to your project manager about how the contract management aspect of it. So not just the service delivery, but your contract management aspect. Are your deliverables on time? Talking about the monthly reports, invoices, are they submitted on time? Are they accurate? And that's where contract management, effective contract management support is super valuable, because then you're able to talk about those pieces as well. And contract management is more than just your invoices and your monthly reports. There's compliance issues. There's all these other things, all that stuff that's related to the FAR, all those details that you kind of gloss over when you look at the contract because it just makes your head hurt. That's what Karen and her team take care of. And it can help you get that exceptional score on your CPARs for management of the contract. So it's important to include those details as well, because when you're making life easier for your federal clients, they're happy to make life easier for you. They're happy to talk about that. They're happy to give you those scores. And during these interviews, because you know what the company's planning to go after, start talking to the project staff. What else are you seeing? What are you hearing? We're looking at these kinds of things. Have you heard anything about this? Help training them to be listening and bringing information back within, obviously within limits. There's confidentiality issues, but they can let you know about pain points and things that they're seeing in the clients that they're working with, in the offices, in the agencies, what they're seeing pain points, because they've got a different view. They're looking at things from a different angle, and that can really benefit your BD work. And as you start to talk to the federal or prime contractor players at the different layers, if you are able to have an intelligent conversation with them about things that you know for sure are taking place in the agency, that ups your credibility and lets you dig deeper with them as well, without just going in and saying, okay, what are your big headaches? You can go in and go, we understand this is going on, and here's some thoughts, or you can just take your conversations a lot deeper. So formatting and connecting the dots, format and connect the dots, super, super critical, because you know it. You know how those dots connect. You see it. It makes perfect sense to you. Your reviewers don't know you, probably don't know you, don't know your work, may not even know the work of the solicitation super well. Sure, there's some experts in what's happening on the panel, but the review panel that's reviewing your proposal, you don't know for sure that they know you, that they know your work. A lot of times people get volunteered, or it's somebody who's not super busy that's jumping in to help with these things. So you don't know what they know about what's going on. So you've got to use your knowledge to connect the dots and make everything stand out, make it super easy for them to give you the points. The easier you can make it for the reviewers to give you the points, the happier they're going to be as they look at your proposal. And that when people are happy, they award higher scores. So I'm going to dig into these. I've got some examples that we're going to look at on the next couple slides. If you have questions about these as we're going through them, put it in the chat now, and we'll take those as we're looking at the actual pages so that we can answer those questions in real time. Bigger, higher level questions, we'll do Q&A at the end. But go ahead, if you have something, throw it in the chat as we go through these next couple examples, talking about highlighting and connecting the dots between your work, the solicitation, to make it easier for the reviewers. So the first thing is to use a table for the data, for the contract data. So this is the past performance overview or past performance description that you're actually going to put in the proposal. This is always going to be a condensed version of your master. Your master, you're capturing anything and everything, as much information as possible. Here, you're responding to exactly what they ask for in the solicitation. And I can't overstate that enough. Exactly what they ask for in the solicitation. Use their words. Never, ever, ever just take the table that you used for another proposal, drop it in without looking at how it aligns and checking your data. So they don't always number it, but use numbers. It makes it easier for them to follow along. But when you look at the past performance volume instructions, there'll be a laundry list of what they want you to include. Include the things they ask for in that exact order using their exact words. So that's what this area on the left is. So it's the shade in the shaded, that's shaded blue. I've got everything in order that they asked for it. Sometimes I will condense things. So like point of contact, name, address, phone number, and email. I don't do a separate row for all of that because usually they're not numbered. If they are numbered, you have to do separate rows. But if it's just like a laundry list in a paragraph, and look at that section, they might have two sets. Sometimes they'll have two sets of requirements in one section. So make sure you're capturing everything, but do it in the order that they ask for. And because when you're doing proposals, space is at a premium, you're allowed to use smaller font size for tables, do that, but don't put your narrative text in there because you can get dinged for trying to put narrative text into tables to avoid font size requirements because they usually have a minimum font size for your narrative text, usually 12 point, but they'll let you go down to 10 point for tables. So as you can see for item number 4, the description in the solicitation was brief description of the contract effort, and put C below, and then see below I've got brief description. Now I didn't restate everything of the contract effort because I added the with relevance to the past performance work statement. So they know that you're making that connection. Brief description and brief description, that's pretty easy to see that those are the match and it immediately follows the table. If there was more distance between it and when it followed the table, but you probably won't ever have that. So at any rate, use the C below if you've got narrative text because you want to make sure that your narrative text is meeting the font requirements. And here again is where contract management, effective contract management is critical. Program title, the name of the contracting agency, you've got to get that exactly right the way it is in your contract. Contract number, sometimes there's a contract number and a task order number. You need to have both of those. Look at your contract, make sure it all matches. The type of contract, period of performance, total contract value. Sometimes they ask for total contract value. Sometimes they ask for total value and current value. So you have to know what the total awarded is. You have to know what awarded to date is. If the final value is different from the total award, sometimes you need to present that. If it asks for total contract value and the contract's over, sometimes, then you want to put what the actual spend was, not what was awarded, because you didn't spend it all. So understanding all of that comes down, that's your contract management. And so the type of work, what Karen and Lindsay, their team at Streamline does is really make sure that all this information is always accurate and ready to go anytime you need it for a proposal. Your point of contact, you usually want to use, unless they ask for the contract office. Sometimes they ask for both. Who's your contract office rep, point of contact? Who's your program point of contact? If they just ask for point of contact, put your program person, because that is who's going to be able to talk about the work that you've done. And then anything regarding compliance with terms and conditions. If you're compliant, you want to state that. Don't just say none for that comments. That's an opportunity. That's an opportunity to let them know that you are compliant. And then obviously, if there's poor performance and you don't have any, you definitely want to say none there, not NA. You want to say none, right? You're driving home this message. And then client feedback, if you want to include a client quote. So you see that's not numbered. That's something that we added because we wanted to include it there. Sometimes they ask you to include, if you don't have a CPARS for that contract, they want you to do a past performance questionnaire, but they don't require it if you have a CPARS in the system. So that's another opportunity there in that table. You could say past performance questionnaire requested from, or let them know to expect it, that it's coming. So they're looking for it to match it up. Any questions right here about this table? Anything come in on the contract data table? So usually you've got 2 to 3 pages for a past performance write-up in a proposal. And that's why you want to keep this concise, do it in a table so you can make the font size smaller. It's really information they need to check. You have to make sure it's accurate, but you're not, this isn't where you're explaining how you align and everything like that. Okay, I don't see any questions, so I'm going to move on. So this is that brief description with relevance to the performance work statement. And I am a big fan of including that with relevance to the performance work statement, because it's telling them that this is relevant work, and then you're showing them how it's relevant. So there's two ways, and I've included both examples here. So this first one is where it's grouped by the tasks that are in the solicitation. So you're responding to a solicitation, it's got 9 tasks, and you're going to use those exact task names in this write-up to show relevance. This works best if it's a recompete and the tasks are the same, or if it's a contract for extremely similar work. So you're going to have really great one-to-one matches. It makes it easier for the reviewer when you can do it like this, if you've got work that clearly supports these tasks, because then they can just go down in order of the tasks that are in the solicitation. So I also like to use, relevance here. Call it out again. Why is this relevant? And it's, your related accomplishments, highlight how we, and I would use the company name, drive it home a little bit here, remind them whose proposal they're reading. You're talking about effectively managing complex projects. This ties again into that contract management work, as well as, and then just a brief summary. This should be a short paragraph. Call out maybe some of the highlights, of the work that's related. And then in parentheses, you're putting tasks 1 through 9. So you're telling them again, this supports tasks 1 through 9 of the solicitation. You could even do PWS tasks 1 through 9 if you want it to be super clear that you're referring to the performance work statement. And then you're listing, use the names of the task. You can do slightly abbreviated because you're also going to call out in the parentheses. Some solicitations, the name of the task is 3 lines long. You don't want to have that. You use the shorter version and then call out again in parentheses that this is the task from the PWS. Then you can put a brief statement of the related work that you've done. It can be one level of bullets in. Sometimes you might have an example for that bullet. Don't have to, it's not always required. Think about your page limitation. What you want to put is, you want to focus on the examples that are most relevant to what they're asking for. So if there's, and this you kind of know by their evaluation criteria or how they talk about the different tasks. So if there's a task that's pretty straightforward, hit some of those bullets. But if there's a super complex task that is critical to the mission, if you've got extra support for that, that's where you want to show extra support. It's really the tasks that are most mission critical. That's where you want to highlight your relevance as much as possible. So this is a great way to do that when the tasks align 1-to-1. Does anybody have any questions related to this portion? Okay, great. I'll go into the next way. Oh, okay, wait. Got one here. Let's see what it says. Oh, okay, that's just contact information, right? Not a question. Okay, great. So, like I said, this works great when the solicitation and your previous experience are very closely aligned and the tasks are very, very, very similar. The next way to do it is for those situations where your work is very related to what's happening, but it's not in a task by task and there's lots of overlap. So I'll go back to meetings, for example, because that's kind of an easy thing to picture. So if you've got a previous work where work done under one or two tasks related to conference planning or meeting planning is all clustered, but the solicitation you're responding to has that woven into several different areas. So maybe they're talking about stakeholder engagement and they've got meetings there, and they're talking about events for grantees and they've got meetings there, and they're talking about briefings that you're running and they've got meetings there. You don't want to have to repeat all of that over and over and over again. So here you're going to put the work that you did, because you only want to say it once. So you're doing it this time, you're doing it based on the work that you did. And it doesn't have to be, you can use the tasks that were from your proposal, your current work contract. You can use those tasks, or you can cluster it by topic. Whatever you're doing is, what you're calling out is the relationship to the tasks in the solicitation. So again, it's the same thing at the top. You're saying brief description with relevance to the performance work statement. Then you're calling out relevance again, and you're going to say which tasks it supports. So for this example, I'm saying this, you won't always have work that supports every task in the solicitation. So for this example, we support tasks 1 through 5 and 7 through 9. Task 6 don't support that with this work. So call that out right at the beginning so they know, okay, right here at the top, that first arrow is pointing to here. Okay, this is relating to these tasks. Then as you go down for each of the bullets, state which tasks it relates to. And so here you're making the ties. So you make it very easy. So at the high level, they can go, okay, I know this relates to tasks 1 through 5 and 7 through 9. And as they look down here, they're not going to, probably go back and forth, check each point against it, because you've already told them at the top, but they're just looking to see that consistency and see how things align. And for some of the more critical tasks, they may go back. So again, I use meeting coordination here. So this one, let's say this applies to tasks 4, 7, and 9, and 7 through 9 out of the solicitation. If all the bullets that you include under that meeting coordination apply to that, though all of those tasks, you don't have to say it again every single time, because you've already said at the beginning, everything that follows under this applies to these tasks. So you still want to make it as easy as possible for your reviewer. And, you could even, if you want to be super clear and have the room, you could even put PWS tasks, so they know it's performance work statement, or SOW if they use scope of work. Always use their terminology. So, and I've got this, these 3 pages and some examples of how you can write your examples when you're submitting them to your core or your federal lead for the CPARs. I've got all that in a handout, which Streamline will get to you. It takes them a little while to get all that pulled together and get everything out. So if you want it quickly, you can just reach out to me or put in the chat that that's something you'd like right away, and I'll send that over to you. Otherwise, you'll get it in a couple weeks from Streamline when they send the follow-up out. So any questions about this different way of making those connections? This one's a little bit more complex, but when you group it by your contract tasks, you need to really make the tie back. This is a little bit easier for you to prepare sometimes because you're doing it by the tasks that are in your contract. So you've got all your examples grouped by that. But yeah. And actually that reminds me of another thing that ties back. So when you're interviewing your staff and you're getting the examples from them, you want to keep it by the tasks that are in your contract so that you can do these, it makes it easier when you do these overviews. And then you could note like which CPARs things they support, but usually that's a project manager's job to do that piece of it. When you're the proposal person that's pulling this together, you're really focused on it by either contract task or solicitation task. And I'll just say again, that master overview that you create, that will have all the examples over time, keep adding to it, putting that together. But usually when you're doing it for the proposal, you've got 2 pages, usually maybe 3 max, or they'll give you a number for the volume. That's nice when they do that, because if you have one that is super related and you can show it more concisely and do it in a page, then you have extra space for some that you might want to have more details or something like this. And you can use both styles within one proposal because it's based on how your project relates to the solicitation. So if you have one project that's very directly related, you can do it by task order of the, the tasks from the solicitation. If another project, pieces relate and pieces, one task in your current work relates to 5 tasks in the solicitation, you'd want to use this model because you don't have space to say the same thing over and over, and reviewers don't want to read the same thing over and over. So hopefully that makes sense. Saving the final versions as individual files. So you get your final version done for the proposal. It's tight, your language is tight, you've created it. You want to save those because you may be able to use that with updates for another solicitation. So the way I manage past performance is I had a folder called past performance, and in there I had every project name, and the master version would live at the main level for that project, and I'd have a subfolder that was versions from proposals, and I would use the date, so it always made it easy to find which one was the most recent, because sometimes that's what matters. And I would include which proposal it was from, so I would know, I could look at it and go, oh, that write-up's from a human capital proposal, and this is a human capital solicitation. Let me see what works, what carries over. You might have to do less editing, but you still, even when you're doing that, you have to check that contract data, a table at the top. Another option year might have been exercised, so you're checking the data as well as the order in which it's presented. You always have to update that to make sure it's in alignment with the solicitation. And so those are big, saving those so you have them handy. I would refer back to them all the time. So why do all this? It's not just for better scores. Your clients are going to be happier because when you tell them you're going for exceptional and you prove it, they know you care. They see you going above and beyond. They see you listening to understand them. They see you as a team member, not just a contractor. You're in it together with them. So they're going to be happier. Your staff is going to be more engaged because they get it. They understand how to make a difference. When people know how to be successful and how to make a difference, that they usually strive to do that. So that's another benefit there. And you'll have wins to celebrate. There's lots of benefits to getting your staff involved. And you get more intel for your business development team. Your business development team is hearing directly from projects. They get a better feel for what's happening with the client. They have more insights on your current work. So then when they're assessing opportunities, they've got a deeper view into what the company's actually doing, not just looking at the scope of work. And you can become the contractor of choice. You're going to stand out because you have top scores. You're known as going above and beyond. You're known for exceptional service, and you're known for effective contract management. So when you make it easier, not just for your program staff, you got to think about that, your contract staff, your CO or your contract specialist, whoever your lead is in that office. Making life better for them, is important too, not just on the programmatic side. They're part of your team. And they talk to other people. They move, right? How often have you had it when a contract specialist moves to another agency? You've got a great relationship with them. All of a sudden, you've gotten in at another agency. They love working with you. Your contract, everything's on time. You stay in compliance. You're looking out for them. They want to bring you to the next agency they go to. So now what, right? That's a lot of information. What do you do first? Talk to your clients, right? That's the first part. Find out where you stand, get on the same page, let them know that you are going for exceptionals. Talk to your prime contractors too. Same thing. If you have an evaluation you design for prime contractors that's in line with the CPARs, then you can talk about those evaluation scores together. And that's super powerful in your proposals. Talk to your team. We talked about that. Prepare your master overviews and start really updating them and tailoring them to the solicitation. So that's my presentation. I really appreciate you listening. I hope you found some things valuable. I went through a lot. I went through it pretty fast, and there may be areas where you want me to dig a little deeper. So fire away. You can take yourself off mute and ask a question. You can throw it in the chat, but I'm here for you.
What if there's a contract that is like a terrific match, but we're still in the first year, so we haven't received the CPARs?
Yeah. So a lot of times they'll ask you to have to do a past performance questionnaire. And this is why having that data that you collect in real time handy is super helpful. So think about your federal clients and all that they have going on. They're overloaded. Completing past performance questionnaires is, just another thing on their plate. And they'll do it. They're required to do it. They're happy to, but it is just another thing on their plate. So the easier you can make it for them, the better. And the past performance questionnaire mirrors the CPARs. They'll send you, the template will be included in the solicitation, but take a look at it and fill it out and you can give it to your client and say, fill out the comment section and say, here we've past performance questionnaires are required for this opportunity that we're going after. And we know, starting with a blank page is tough. Hard to remember everything that's gone on. Here, is a draft for you to edit, edit as you see fit, but just helping them not start with a blank page. That will help you, get better scores from the past performance questionnaire and get those examples and client quotes included. When you're writing those client quotes, keep it short, keep them short. Think about this is coming from a Fed. So you want to speak sort of in their voice and really highlight the key points and having that like soundbite feel to it. It's like concisely saying how you added value. And that's where having that data that you've been capturing in real time, super, super handy for that. Or if you have a CPARS, sometimes they ask for a past performance questionnaire, even if you have a CPARS. In that case, just go to the CPARS, pull quotes, pull things that they've said before, and then you submit it to them and say, here's a draft. I used the language from the CPARS that we have on file from you. That makes it super easy for them to submit it.
So we have another question in chat. Going back to the slide where you discussed the table of contract data in the client feedback field you included, do you typically attribute the quote to an individual and include their name, or do you feel it's better to leave their name out?
That's a great question. I think we were using quotes from our CPARs, so they were CPARs in the system, and so I think we saw it kind of as implied, but you're right. That's a great point. Including the name, super helpful. So yeah, go for it.
And what if, again, new question here, what if there's a contract that aligns well, but the ratings are only satisfactory?
Yeah, that's a challenging one because those satisfactory ratings are what's in the system. And so talking about that, being upfront, including those examples where you've gone above and beyond. You could even, offices will only give satisfactory ratings. So you can even include that sort of in the past performance overview. So it's acknowledging that, kind of setting the stage for the reviewer that we've done this work. It's this office's policy to only give satisfactory ratings, but just talking about it, being upfront about it. If you got a satisfactory and you've done things that are going to take it to a very good the next time, you can talk about how that was a learning opportunity. They're going to see that. And so, but just making the strength of your work stand out, you want to do that through the examples that you include, and you can talk to the fact that that's the rating that's in there, and this is what you're doing about it. This is how you're striving to improve that. Or if it's a policy of the agency, that's good for them to know as well.
And if the company is new and does not have past performance, can past performance of the team members be used? So I guess like employees as opposed to the actual company.
You can use that in your corporate experience. You can't use it in the past performance volume. So the past performance volume has to be past performance of the company. But you can usually use non-federal work. So federal work is preferred for those past performances, but you can use non-federal work.
And Diane, would you agree that the instructions and so forth need to be, just viewed very closely and so forth? And I'm going to, if I could share just a quick story. A company hired Streamline manages their contracts, but they ended up, but we don't do proposals. So they hired a proposal management company. And in a couple of instances, the instructions said no text, and they had a graphic with a little bit of text, and they were thrown out for non-compliance. So anyway, I don't know if you have any stories to share or, ways that you, tell companies or whatever, but just wanted to throw that out there.
That's a great point. And yes, you have to pay super close attention to the instructions. And sometimes the instructions will contradict themselves. So that's a great point too. And you try and catch all of those during the Q&A, but sometimes you don't. And if they're not answering questions anymore, and there is a contradiction, say that in your response, right? We're per section, this, we're including whatever, because then it's like, oh, okay, they followed this instruction. Only had that happen, I think, once, where we weren't able to get it answered, and we just had to make our best assessment of which instruction carried the most weight, because a lot of times they copy and paste sections from other solicitations, and they don't realize that there was something in there that referenced back to someplace else, and it just gets missed in their review process. So really looking at it is like, if there's something and you're just not sure, like really study the two instances, pick one and talk about why. Or if you're able to respond to both, say, per this, we're including this, per this, we're including this, making sure. But it's always good to point back to the solicitation if there's ever a gray area.
Good suggestion. And we have time for one more question, then I will throw it back to Lindsay. If people have other questions, you can contact Diane directly. Let me get to this last question. What if you're bidding as a JV and have no past performance for the JV, but do have past performance for the partner firms within the JV.
My understanding is that you create a JV so that you can use each other's past performance, and that you just need to be really clear about which contractor performed the work when you do the overviews. So really clear about which contractor in the JV performed the work. I think that's spelled out in lots of resources that are available about JVs and how they work. I would double check that, just because I wasn't part of a JV, but I worked with companies that were. But my understanding is, yes, that's absolutely why JVs are created. You can use each other's past performance. And going back to that new company, just real quick too, if you're using subcontractor work, be very clear that who the prime contractor was, and use your contract number with the prime contractor, not the prime contractor's contract number. You can reference it. You can say, for that contract number, you can say subcontract, your contract number, and then in parentheses under JBS's prime contract number, But if you put the prime contractor's contract number in there, be really clear who that contract belonged to, because if the government looks up that contract number and sees a different company, you don't want them thinking that you're like trying to take credit for somebody else's work or anything like that. So be really clear in that contract data table to use your point of contract with the prime contractor, your contract number with the prime contractor, because your client is the prime, not the federal government.
Lots of great questions, and thank you
Yes.
so much for your time, Diane. I appreciate you coming back and doing another webinar for us, and I'm going to turn it back to Lindsay.
Great.
Thanks, Diane and Karen. That was an excellent presentation. Let's go ahead and take a look at what's coming up next. Our Government Contractor Chat complimentary Zoom webinar series will be the third Wednesday of each month, excluding holidays, from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Wednesday, February 19th, we will have Rebecca Link, Solutions Strategist for GovCon Powerhouse Steampunk, presenting You Have Been Down Selected. What should you know about the orals presentation? Wednesday, March 19th, we will have Ashley Duell, CEO of Duell Dev, host of GovCon Hacks podcast, and Government Contracting SME, presenting Essential Capability Statement Tips for Government Contractors. To register for these webinars, you can scan the QR code on the screen now. Thank you for your time today. We'll see you in February.